Attorney, I just sent you a divorce agreement. It was signed by my husband and me on the first day of our marriage. Could you check if there's any issue with it? Delia stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, her fingers unconsciously rubbing the edge of her phone. Miss Delia, I've reviewed the agreement, and there are no issues, came the professional voice of the lawyer on the other end of the line. There's still 1 month left before the 3-year term expires. Once it does, the agreement will automatically take effect, and you can simply go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to obtain the divorce certificate. Okay, thank you. After hanging up the phone, Delia looked up at the wedding photo on the wall. In the photo, she was dressed in a pure white wedding gown, her eyes curved into crescents from smiling. Standing beside her, Hugh was impeccably dressed in a suit, his face handsome, yet without a trace of a smile. Love or its absence was clear at a glance. The day is finally almost here. You must be very happy, she murmured softly to herself, her fingertips lightly tracing the man's stern profile in the photo. The sound of the door unlocking came from the entrance. Delia quickly withdrew her hand and turned to greet him. You're back. She took Hugh's suit jacket as he removed it, then knelt down to change his shoes for him. Her movements so practiced it seemed as if she had rehearsed them 1,000 times. Hugh loosened his tie, his expression cool. Next month is the Osmond family's corporate anniversary celebration. You're required to attend the banquet. Delia paused while adjusting her coat and shook her head. I can't go. Why can't you go? Hugh frowned. Delia was about to speak when Hugh suddenly seemed to understand something, his gaze turning cold. Is it because I've been spending time with Elva lately? I told you on the first day of our marriage that I have someone I love. You also said you wouldn't interfere. Delia's heart ached sharply, as if someone had torn a gaping wound in it. Indeed, whose husband would tell his wife on their wedding day that he already had a beloved, and even signed a divorce agreement to take effect in 3 years. She was merely fulfilling his wish. She wouldn't be here next month, hence unable to attend that banquet. 3 years ago, the Osmond family and the Raymond family, 2 prominent wealthy clans, announced their impending alliance through marriage. Delia had secretly loved Hugh since childhood and was overjoyed when she learned she could marry him. But on their wedding night, Hugh handed her a divorce agreement. I have someone I love, but her family is ordinary, and the Osmond family won't allow her to enter. His tone was cold, his words blunt. I will spend 3 years becoming the head of the Osmond family. By then, no one will dare to oppose us. For these 3 years, we'll just be a couple in name, and divorce when the time comes. That night, Delia signed as he wished but cried in the bathroom all night. Less than 3 months after the wedding, Elva disappeared without a trace. Hugh in a fit of anger. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Hugh searched for her frantically, using all his connections, but never found any trace of her. During that time, he would stay out all night, returning only with the stench of alcohol, his eyes dark and terrifying, until one late night, he came home completely drunk and pinned her down on the bed. His kiss descended, carrying a strong scent of alcohol. Yet what he said was, Elva, why did you leave? Why be with someone else? Don't you trust me? Delia stiffened all over, her heart feeling as if it were being tightly gripped, the pain nearly suffocating. So, he had found her, but Elva is already with someone else. That night was her first time, yet Hugh held her in his arms and called out another woman's name all night long. When he woke up the next morning, Hugh saw the bloodstains on the sheets, his gaze faltering slightly, but he said nothing. Delia also acted as if nothing had happened, preparing his change of clothes for him, even softly reminding him about an important meeting today before he left. She pretended nothing was wrong, but inside she was already bleeding profusely. From then on, she treated him with even more careful tenderness. Since he had a weak stomach, she woke up early every morning to cook nourishing porridge for him. When he was stressed from work, she learned massage techniques to help relieve his fatigue. She liked quietness, so she never made noise in front of him, even walking with light steps. Gradually, Hugh seemed to regard her as his wife. He began to bring her a small gift when he returned from business trips. He would make her a cup of cold medicine when she caught a cold. He would even hold her close as they fell asleep at night, his palm resting on her waist, his body temperature scorching hot. Hugh never mentioned divorce again, as if that agreement had never existed. Delia even naively thought that perhaps he might truly come to love her. Until 3 months ago, Elva ended the relationship and returned to the country. Hugh almost immediately returned to her side. He accompanied her to meals, went shopping with her, and even cancelled important meetings, all because of Elva's single remark. "I'm in a bad mood." Delia stood by the window, watching Hugh's car head once again toward Elva's apartment, and finally understood. True love is true love, no matter how much she gave. It couldn't compare to Elva's single glance. Fortunately, the 3-year contractual marriage is finally coming to an end. She told herself to treat these 3 years as just a dream. Now that the dream is over, it's time for her to leave. "Why aren't you saying anything?" Hugh's voice snapped her out of her reverie. Delia stared blankly at Hugh, her throat tightening. He doesn't remember the divorce agreement. For these 3 years, she had been counting each day, terrified that once the deadline arrived, he would leave without hesitation. Yet now, it seemed he had completely forgotten about it. She opened her mouth, about to remind him. Hugh's phone suddenly rang. As soon as the call connected, Elva's voice came through with a sob. Delia couldn't make out what she was saying, but saw Hugh's expression suddenly change. "Don't be afraid. I'll be right there." He hung up the phone, grabbed the car keys, and rushed out. In his haste, his shoulder collided heavily with her. Delia staggered, her back hitting the doorframe, letting out a muffled groan from the pain. But Hugh didn't even look back, his figure already disappearing through the doorway. Delia leaned against the wall and slowly walked back to the bedroom. She took off her coat, revealing a bruise already forming on her shoulder. She took out the first aid kit and silently applied medicine to herself. But it felt as if a blunt knife was slowly cutting through her heart. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the gradually darkening sky outside the window, until the phone rang. It was Hugh. "Come to the downtown hospital." Delia felt her heart skip a beat and instinctively asked, "What happened?" "We'll talk when you get here." Delia arrived to see Hugh standing outside the operating room, while Elva leaned against his chest, crying her heart out. Delia paused mid-step, her chest tightening as if gripped by an invisible force, making each breath a struggle. "What's going on?" she asked softly as she approached. Hugh looked up at her. "Elva's mother suddenly developed leukemia and needs an immediate bone marrow transplant." Delia froze. "And then, we've searched the entire city, and there's no suitable match," Hugh said calmly. "I got tested, and the results matched." Delia's pupils contracted as she stared at him in disbelief. "You're going to donate bone marrow?" "Donating bone marrow carries risks. I didn't call you here to get your approval." Hugh interrupted her. "The surgery requires a family member's signature." Family. Delia felt a sharp pain in her heart. Yes, legally, she was still his wife, but in his heart, his family had never been her. Delia clenched her fingers so tightly that her nails nearly dug into her palms. "Okay," she heard herself say. "I'll sign." The nurse handed her the surgical consent form. She wrote her name stroke by stroke, each one feeling like a cut to her own heart. Hugh released Elva and turned to walk toward the operating room. At the last second before the door closed, Delia finally couldn't help but call out to him. "Hugh." He turned to look at her, his gaze indifferent. Delia trembled, but in the end, she only whispered softly, "Be careful." Hugh flickered his eyes slightly, but said nothing, turning to enter the operating room. The moment the door closed, Delia's tears finally came crashing down. She finally understood that Hugh's love for Elva ran so deep he would even give up his life. The operating room light remained on, and the corridor was so quiet that only the sound of breathing could be heard. Delia sat on the bench, her fingertips icy cold, while Elva sat across from her, eyes red-rimmed, glancing up at the operating room door from time to time. Finally, Elva spoke softly. "Miss Delia, I'm sorry for causing you trouble again." Delia looked up at her without speaking. Elva wiped her tears, her voice choked with emotion. "I really didn't expect. After all these years, Hugh still has such deep feelings for me." She paused, as if lost in memories. "Do you know, on my birthday last year, he flew all the way to Paris just to give me a necklace. It was a style I once casually mentioned liking, and he actually remembered it all along. Yet I was still sulking with him, threw the necklace right back at him, and didn't even let him through the door." Delia's fingers suddenly clenched, her nails digging deep into her palms. She remembered clearly. Last year Hugh told her he was going abroad for a 3-day business trip. When he returned, he brought back a necklace and casually gave it to her. Overjoyed, she had treasured that necklace in the deepest layer of her jewelry box, reluctant to even wear it. But it turned out, it was Elva's cast-off that he casually gave to her. Elva continued. "And the Christmas before last, I had a huge fight with my then boyfriend and posted a very negative moment. Hugh saw it and flew over overnight, standing outside my apartment building the entire night. It was snowing heavily. Yet he stood there, never daring to come up and knock. Delia's heart suddenly clenched. She remembered that Christmas Eve, only because Hugh had taken her 7 times with unusual fervor, making her think he had finally begun to develop feelings for her. When she woke up the next day, the pillow beside her was already cold, and she simply assumed he had left to attend to urgent official business. So, he had rushed off to see Elva. These past 3 years, Elva's tears fell once more. I've been holding a grudge against him, deliberately not contacting him, but Hugh never forgot about me for a single day, writing me a letter every day, even though I never replied. Delia suddenly found it hard to breathe. Countless late nights, she saw the steady light on, thinking he was handling company documents, and even made coffee to bring in for him. Turns out, he was writing love letters to Elva. She had always believed that at least during Elva's absence, Hugh genuinely wanted to build a life with her. Only now did she realize that from beginning to end, it had all been just her own delusional fantasy. She thought she had finally warmed his heart, but in truth, his thoughts were entirely of someone else. Seeing Elva about to continue, Delia suddenly stood up. Her face was pale, almost translucent, yet her voice struggled to remain calm. I have something to attend to. I must go. Without waiting for Elva to respond, she turned and walked away quickly, her steps growing faster until she was almost fleeing in panic. After returning home, she silently packed all her belongings, just waiting for the day the divorce agreement would take effect. During this time, she could see Hugh's recent updates from Elva's social media. His surgery was very successful, yet he didn't rest for a moment, immediately arranging the best ward for Elva's mother, bringing in top medical teams from abroad, and even personally overseeing every treatment plan. Elva's latest social media post was a photo. Hugh sat by the hospital bed, receiving an 4 drip while intently peeling a pomegranate for her with his head bowed. Her caption read, "I'll never meet someone who loves me this much again." Delia's heart ached sharply, and her tears fell onto the phone screen, blurring the gentle profile of Hugh in the photo. She recalled how, over the years, she had also cared for him with the same devotion. His stomach is not good, so she cooks stomach-nourishing porridge for him every day. He is busy with work, and she always leaves the light on waiting for him to come home. The fruits that reached his hands were always peeled, pitted, and cut into bite-sized pieces. But now, he was doing these things for someone else. She took a deep breath, wiped away her tears, and told herself, it's okay. After no longer loving him, she would learn to love herself well. A week later, Hugh suddenly returned home. Delia was surprised, as he should have been by Elva's side at all times. "Family dinner tonight. Change your clothes," he said curtly. Delia understood and quietly changed into appropriate attire before leaving with him. At the family banquet, everyone raised their glasses and exchanged pleasantries. As the conversation flowed, the topic turned to her and Hugh. "You've been married for 3 years now. It's about time you had a child." Indeed, Hugh is now the head of the family and must have an heir. "Delia, you really need to hurry up." Delia lowered her eyes, listening silently, her fingers unconsciously tracing the rim of the cup. At that moment, Hugh, who had remained silent until now, suddenly spoke. No rush. His voice wasn't loud, yet it instantly silenced the entire dining room. Everyone's expressions changed, but due to Hugh's current status as the family head, no one dared to say another word. The atmosphere abruptly froze, and the meal ultimately ended in an eerie silence. After dinner, Hugh's mom stood up, her gaze sharp as she looked at Delia. "Delia, come with me to the study. Anyone with eyes can see this is about pressuring her to have children." Hugh clearly noticed too, frowning as he said, "If you have something to say it directly to me." Hugh's mom was just about to speak when Hugh's phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID, his expression shifting slightly, and immediately stepped aside to answer, his tone uncharacteristically gentle. "Elva, what's wrong?" Hugh's mom snorted coldly and directly said to Delia, "Come with me." Delia pursed her lips and silently followed. As the study door closed, Hugh's mom's expression instantly darkened. "Kneel." Delia slowly knelt on the cold marble floor. "Do you know what you did wrong?" Hugh's mom looked down at her from above. Delia lowered her eyelashes and remained silent. Snap. Hugh's mom suddenly slammed the table. "The fault lies with Hugh for saying he's in no hurry to have children, and you didn't even try to persuade him." She took a porcelain bottle from the drawer and placed it heavily on the table. This is medicine to aid conception. Starting today, you must drink it daily and share a bed with Hugh until you're pregnant. In the past, Delia would have obediently taken it. But this time, she raised her head, her voice soft yet firm. I won't take this medicine. Hugh's mom pupils contracted sharply. What did you say? I won't take this medicine. Hugh doesn't want children for now, and I respect his decision. All these years whenever we were intimate, Hugh always took precautions. Even if he occasionally lost control in moments of passion, he would always make sure she took contraceptive pills immediately afterward. She had naively believed that he just didn't want a child for the time being. Only now did she realize that he had never even considered having a child with her. Now that she had decided to leave, she wouldn't let herself become pregnant with his child, adding unnecessary ties. What did you say? Hugh's mom suddenly raised her voice. I won't eat. Delia repeated. How dare you disobey me? Hugh's mom trembled with anger. As a daughter-in-law, you fail in your duties. Hugh is donating bone marrow to Elva's mother, and you didn't even stop him. She shouted sharply. Bring the family discipline rod. Soon, the servant brought the family discipline tool, a rattan whip soaked in salt water. Hugh's mom stood holding the whip and said sternly, I'll ask one last time. Will you take this medicine or not? Delia shook her head. Snap. The first lash struck, and a searing pain instantly spread from her back to every limb. Delia clenched her teeth, her back instantly drenched in cold sweat. Are you going to eat or not? Delia still clenched her teeth and shook her head. The whip came down again and again. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, she saw Hugh still on the phone in the garden. His back was turned to the study, his posture relaxed, occasionally letting out a light chuckle, clearly enjoying his conversation with Elva. In that case, I'll beat you until you understand what it means to be a proper daughter-in-law. The whip tore through the fabric, leaving streaks of blood on the skin. Delia trembled in pain but refused to let go. I won't eat. Blood soaked through her clothes, and her vision began to blur. The last thing she saw was Hugh's back as he continued talking on the phone. Before darkness swallowed her consciousness, Delia thought, perhaps this was for the best. After enduring this final pain, she would never hurt for him again. Delia awoke to find herself lying on a hospital bed. The respectful voice of the hospital director reached her ears. Mr. Hugh, the whip marks on the young madam are quite deep, with some areas having damaged the dermal layer. Use the best medicine and assign the finest doctors. Hugh's voice was low and icy. Ensure she doesn't scar. Yes, we'll do our best. After the dean left, Hugh turned around and realized she was already awake. He quickly walked to the bedside, his brow slightly furrowed. How do you feel? Delia tried to move, the wound on her back burning with pain. She forced herself to say, It's fine. There are professionals here to take care of me. If you're busy, you can go. Unexpectedly, Hugh didn't leave. He sat down by the bed, looking at her with a complicated gaze. Mother gave you a hard time. Why didn't you call for me? Delia recalled his back as he was intently talking to Elva, and smiled bitterly. You seemed busy. She paused and asked softly, If I call you, will you really come to me at once? Of course, Hugh answered without hesitation. Delia was stunned. This answer was completely different from what she had expected. I've already dealt with the family side. He continued. No one will trouble you about the child anymore. Understood. Delia lowered her eyes. You can go attend to your business. Why are you always rushing me to leave? Hugh frowned and asked. Delia looked somewhat startled. Aren't you very busy? Busy with company matters. Busy accompanying Elva. Not busy lately. He reached out to tuck in her blanket. I can take care of you these few days. This completely caught Delia by surprise. In the following days, Hugh actually stayed at the hospital to take care of her, adjust the hospital bed for her, feed her meals, and even personally change her dressings. One night when she was in too much pain to sleep, Hugh sat by the bed, patting her back gently as if soothing a child until she fell into a deep slumber. This tenderness made Delia feel as if she had returned to their most intimate days, but she would no longer indulge in it. She had already decided to leave and would not look back. A week later, Delia's back showed much fainter whip marks. That day, Hugh paused abruptly while applying medicine for her when she accidentally let out a soft moan. His movements suddenly halted. Delia turned back in confusion, only to see his darkened gaze, his Adam's apple bobbing, and beneath him, her expression shifted slightly. Hugh had already drawn closer to her, his breathing growing heavier, just as his lips were about to touch hers. Snap! A crisp sound shattered the ambiguous atmosphere in the hospital room. Both turned their heads simultaneously to see Elva standing at the doorway. The fruit basket she had been holding now fallen to the ground, its contents scattered everywhere. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her voice trembling. Did I interrupt something? Hugh abruptly pushed Delia away. Elva, it's not what you think. His movements were too abrupt. Delia was caught off guard and pushed backward, tumbling off the hospital bed. With a dull thud, the back of her head struck the sharp corner of the bedside table, causing blood to flow instantly. I won't disturb you anymore. Elva turned and ran away in tears. Elva. Hugh didn't even glance at Delia lying on the ground, chasing out without hesitation. Delia lay on the ground, her vision blurred by blood. She suddenly laughed, laughing until tears streamed down her face. By the time the nurse found her, she had already lost consciousness again from excessive blood loss. In her final moments of consciousness, she heard the nurse's panicked shout, "The patient has a head injury. Call the doctor quickly." But Hugh never returned. Due to the head injury, Delia had to stay in the hospital for several more days. Hugh never appeared again. She knew he must be busy comforting Elva, so she didn't call him even once, nor did she send a single message. On the day of discharge, the butler called to inquire about Hugh's birthday banquet arrangements. Delia held her phone and remained silent for a long time. In previous years, Hugh's birthdays had always been arranged by her. The Osmond family, though wealthy, lacked warmth. His parents didn't even know he was allergic to peanuts and would prepare cakes with peanut butter every year. She remembered seeing him secretly take allergy medication during his first birthday banquet she attended. Why not just tell them? She asked with concern at the time. No need. His expression was indifferent. They care more about this year's company financial report than this. From then on, she began personally preparing his birthday banquets. Every dish, every bouquet is arranged according to his preferences. He no longer has to face decorations he dislikes, nor worry about accidentally consuming food he's allergic to. Madam, the butler urged on the other end of the phone. Delia took a deep breath. I'll handle it. This is the last time. After the divorce, naturally, someone else would take care of his birthday. As in previous years, she meticulously prepared, but this time, she had the butler follow every step, explaining in detail. The cake should be Black Forest. No peanut butter. Use white roses for the decorative flowers. He dislikes red roses. Don't include tequila in the drink menu. It gives him headaches. Make sure to remember all these details. When you handle it next time, don't make any mistakes. The butler asked in confusion. Won't you be handling it next time? Delia lowered her eyelashes and didn't answer. Next time. She's no longer Ms. Osmond. How could it still be her responsibility? On the day of the birthday banquet, the air was filled with the fragrance of fine attire and the glow of bright lights. Delia stood at the entrance in a pale blue gown, greeting guests as she watched Hugh escort Elva into the venue hand in hand. Elva wore a pink chiffon dress, clinging to Hugh like a delicate bird as they entered. At that moment, everything became clear to her. It seems he has already managed to cheer her up. Hugh kept his eyes glued to Elva the entire time. Her wine glass emptied. He immediately had it replaced with juice. Her skirt ruffled by the wind. He sent someone to straighten it for her. When she ate something delicious, her eyes curved into crescents, and he couldn't help but chuckle softly, his lips curling into a tender smile. Yet from beginning to end, he didn't glance at Delia once. Delia stood quietly in the corner greeting guests, like a dutiful butler. When it came time to open gifts, the presents from the guests were all priceless treasures. Delia's limited edition watch was solemnly presented by the butler on a silver tray. Madam has excellent taste. This watch is limited to just 10 pieces worldwide. It matches Mr. Hugh's temperament perfectly, as expected of a couple. They understand Mr. Hugh's preferences best. Hugh glanced at Delia and, clearly satisfied, calmly said, "Thank you." But when they opened Elva's gift, the room suddenly fell silent for a moment. It was a hand-knitted beige scarf, with uneven stitches that clearly showed it was made by a beginner. Someone couldn't help but laugh. Who still gives handmade scarves these days? This cheap yarn. Mr. Hugh might get an allergic reaction if he wears it. Right. Who is this woman? How did someone dressed so shabbily get in here? Elva turned pale and instinctively took a few steps back. Hugh's expression darkened instantly. He picked up the scarf and wrapped it around his neck in front of everyone. I really like this gift. His voice was soft, yet it silenced the entire room. Compared to expensive items, I cherish the thoughtfulness of something handmade even more. After speaking, he picked up Delia's gifted wristwatch and said coldly, "As for this, though expensive, it carries no sincerity." The sound of the watch being thrown into the trash was particularly jarring. The entire banquet hall instantly fell into an eerie silence, then erupted with waves of agreement. Mr. Hugh is absolutely right. Handmade items have soul. Watches won't do. Look at the unique stitching on this scarf. What a talented and skillful young lady. Delia stood frozen in place, feeling as if all the blood in her body had turned to ice. It was something she had spent 3 whole months selecting, flying to flagship stores across several countries and comparing over a dozen styles. And now, it was discarded like trash, just to back Elva up. If she really thought about it, how many similar scenes had there been during this time? He can skip important meetings for Elva, yet forget her birthday. He can stay up all night caring for a sick Elva, but won't even call when her fever won't break. He can fly halfway around the world for Elva's words, yet begrudges even the time to share a meal with her. Every time, he chooses Elva without hesitation, just as today he discarded her gift without a second thought. Delia gently touched her chest, where her heart had once beaten so fervently for him, but now lay as still as stagnant water. To love someone truly can indeed be utterly exhausting. All those past palpitations, expectations, and pains had been gradually worn away by his repeated choices. She would no longer grieve for him, for her heart was now hollow. Next, in the banquet hall, all eyes were fixed on Elva. Those guests who had just been mocking her shabbiness were now scrambling to fawn over her. Delia stood in the corner, curling her lips. This is the rule of the game in high society. Hugh's mere glance could make everyone flock to him. That's fine too. After the divorce anyway, Hugh would probably let Elva take over the Osmond family directly. Introducing her to the public now is just laying the groundwork in advance. The banquet ended, and the guests gradually left. Delia stood at the door, bidding farewell to each guest with a proper smile on her face, as if she were still the impeccable Ms. Osmond. Only after the last guest had left did she finally let out a slight sigh of relief. As she turned around, she saw Hugh and Elva standing at the door. Outside, heavy rain poured down, the curtain of rain weaving densely as a cold wind carrying moisture rushed in. Elva shivered slightly and couldn't suppress a sneeze. Hugh frowned and immediately took off his suit jacket to drape it over her shoulders. Still cold, Elva shivered. Hugh's gaze swept across and suddenly landed on Delia. A cashmere shawl draped over her shoulders, its soft beige fabric glowing with a delicate sheen under the light. "Give your shawl to Elva," he said. Delia, her fingers trembled slightly, and her face instantly paled. "This was my grandmother's. I know it was made by your late grandmother herself." Hugh interrupted her. "Elva just wants to borrow it. Why are you being so petty?" Delia's throat tightened. Her fingertips clutched the edge of the shawl desperately, but in the end, she slowly loosened her grip and took it off. She knew that even if she refused, Hugh would have someone take it from her directly. As she handed it over, Elva reached out to take it with an apologetic smile. "Thank you. I'll wash it and return it to you." "No." Delia quickly shook her head, anxiously reiterating, "This absolutely must not be soaked in water. It needs dry cleaning. I'll send someone to pick it up tomorrow." Elva nodded. "I understand." Just then, the driver pulled the car over, stopping steadily at the entrance. Hugh glanced at Elva and noticed her pale complexion and slightly furrowed brows. He turned to Delia and said, "Elva has caught a cold. I'll take her home first. It's not on the way, so you'll have to go back by yourself." Without waiting for Delia to respond, he had already ushered Elva into the car. The car door closed, the engine started, and the black sedan soon disappeared into the curtain of rain, leaving only Delia standing alone at the doorway, the rainwater splashing onto the hem of her skirt. The street was empty in the heavy rain. Delia stood in the cold wind for 40 minutes before finally hailing a taxi. By the time she got home, she was completely drenched and feeling lightheaded. Her forehead was frighteningly hot. She forced herself to take fever-reducing medicine before collapsing onto the bed and falling into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, her phone kept vibrating incessantly, but her head was splitting with pain, and she didn't even have the strength to lift a hand. She could only let it vibrate over and over until it finally fell silent. The next day, Delia finally broke her fever, but her throat was as dry as if it had been scorched by fire. With great effort, she propped herself up, took a sip of water, and only then picked up her phone. On the screen, Over a dozen unread messages were all from Elva. She clicked open, and the first image made her pupils contract sharply. That precious cashmere shawl was completely soaked in water. Its originally soft fibers now wet and clumped together. Already deformed. Messages popped up one after another. Sorry about that. I forgot the shawl couldn't get wet. So I went home and soaked it in water right away. I'm really sorry. How much does this shawl cost? I'll pay you back for it. Actually, the material is quite nice. I could keep it and repurpose it into a scarf or something. If you don't say anything, I'll take it as your agreement. Okay. Then I'll compensate you 30 yuan. You mentioned it was made by your grandmother. So this price should be about right, don't you think? The last image showed the shawl cut into pieces, its edges deliberately shredded into tatters, as if someone had maliciously destroyed it. Delia, her fingers trembled as fury surged through her. She threw off the covers, ignoring her low fever, and stormed out the door. Elva's apartment door. Delia rang the doorbell, her gaze chillingly cold. The door opened. Elva, in casual homewear, looked at her with surprise. Miss Delia, what brings you here? Where is my shawl? Delia asked, her voice icy. Elva turned and picked up the shredded shawl from the sofa. Didn't I already pay for it? She finished speaking and glanced down at her phone. Didn't you receive the 30 transfer? Did you think it was too little? Then I'll add another 20. Since it's made by the elderly anyway, it shouldn't be too expensive. Snap. A loud slap landed hard on Elva's face. She staggered back a step, covering her cheek, looking at Delia in disbelief. You hit me. Delia's eyes were sharp as she spoke word by word. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Elva's eyes instantly reddened, her voice trembling with tears. What do you mean on purpose? I don't understand what you're saying. Deliberately coming back. Deliberately calling Hugh when your mother needed a bone marrow donation. Deliberately saying those words to me outside the operating room. Deliberately barging in when Hugh and I were kissing. And now deliberately cutting up my shawl. Delia took a step closer, her voice as cold as ice. Elva, I'm telling you, I see through many of your tricks. Just because I don't say anything doesn't mean I'll keep enduring your humiliation. Elva paled, but her tears fell even harder. I really don't know what you're talking about. Delia gritted her teeth and was about to speak again when suddenly, a cold voice came from the doorway. Delia, what are you doing? She turned her head abruptly. Hugh stood at the doorway, his gaze terrifyingly dark. Delia. Hugh strode over to Elva, his fingers gently brushing the red mark on her face. His eyes filled with heartache as if scalded. She hit you. What happened? Elva recounted the incident through tears, Hugh's expression growing increasingly somber. It's just a shawl. Was it necessary to resort to violence? He turned to confront Delia, his voice as cold as ice. Isn't it just a shawl? Delia's voice trembled. Hugh, that's the only thing my grandmother left me. Hugh was stunned. After 3 years of marriage, Delia had always been gentle and proper, never even raising her voice. At this moment, her reddened eyes and trembling shoulders made her seem strangely unfamiliar to him for an instant. Elva didn't do it on purpose, he said, softening his tone. She's already compensated you. What more do you want? If you're not satisfied with the amount, I'll pay. With that, he took out a checkbook from his suit's inner pocket, swiftly signed a figure, and handed it over. Is this enough? Delia looked at Hugh as he handed her the check, her heart feeling as if it were being tightly squeezed by an invisible hand, the pain making it almost impossible to breathe. Hugh, seeing her hesitation to take it, slightly furrowed his brows, tore off another check, and wrote a new amount. Not enough. His tone was cold, as if discussing nothing more than a transaction. How about this? Check after check was pushed toward Delia, the amounts growing larger. Yet her heart grew colder with each one. Finally, she reached out to take the last check, her fingertips trembling slightly. Enough. Her voice was soft, yet it seemed to take all the strength she had left. Hugh, not only is this check enough, but this marriage of ours is enough too. With that, she turned to leave. But before she could take 2 steps, Hugh's icy voice came from behind. Stop right there. Delia paused mid-step but did not turn around. You took the money, but the matter of that slap isn't over yet, he said in a tone that brooked no argument. Apologize to Elva. Delia stiffened, slowly turning around with red-rimmed eyes. What did you say? Hugh met her gaze coldly. I said, apologize. What if I don't? Her voice trembled. The Raymond family and the Osmond family still have collaborations. Hugh spoke calmly. Yet each word cut like a knife. Delia felt her pupils contract sharply, as if her heart had been brutally stabbed. She never imagined he would use her parents' life's work to threaten her. The air seemed to freeze for a few seconds. Finally, Delia slowly lowered her head, her voice hoarse. "I'm sorry." Elva covered her face, saying, "Miss Delia, are you truly apologizing? Or is this how people in your high society give such half-hearted apologies?" Delia clenched her fists tightly, her nails digging deep into her palms. The next second, she abruptly bent down and bowed deeply to Elva. "I'm sorry." Her voice choked, yet each word was clear. "Miss Elva, I shouldn't have acted out. Please forgive me." After speaking, she straightened up and looked at Hugh. "Is this acceptable now?" Hugh stared at her reddened eyes, and for some reason, his heart twinged slightly. He suddenly remembered that 3 years ago, when she had a persistent high fever, she had also looked at him with reddened eyes like this. But back then, her gaze had been filled with nothing but dependence and love. Now, those same eyes held only a deathly stillness. His Adam's apple bobbed as he struggled to speak. But in the end, he only uttered coldly, "That's enough." Delia turned and walked away, her back straight, without a trace of hesitation. Behind her came Hugh's gentle voice. "Does it still hurt? Let me apply the medicine for you." Elva responded coquettishly. "It hurts. Be gentle." Delia continued walking without stopping, tears silently streaming down her face, which she quickly wiped away, leaving no trace. In the days that followed, Hugh did not return home. Delia nor did she make a single phone call. On the day the divorce agreement officially took effect, she went to the civil affairs office alone. When the staff handed her the divorce certificate, she accepted it calmly, her fingertips lightly brushing over the gilded words. Divorce certificate. Surprisingly, there wasn't a ripple of emotion in her heart. Leaving the civil affairs office, it was still early in the day. She hailed a taxi, intending to return to Osmond's villa to collect her final belongings. But as soon as she pushed open the door, she found Hugh unexpectedly at home. "Where have you been?" He stood in the center of the living room, impeccably dressed in a suit. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, he said knowingly, "It's our anniversary today. Did you go out to get a gift?" Delia was taken aback, suddenly remembering, it was indeed their anniversary. 3 years ago today, they exchanged rings amidst everyone's blessings. Yet that very night, he handed her a divorce agreement, saying this marriage was merely a business arrangement and she shouldn't take it seriously. It would end in 3 years. Ironically, the day she now holds the divorce certificate is the same date as their wedding anniversary. As for Hugh, it was understandable that he thought she had gone out to prepare a gift, because every year in the past, she would meticulously prepare gifts he liked, even though he never remembered the date. But this year, why did he suddenly remember? Does he also remember that today is the day their divorce agreement expires? Delia felt a surge of emotions but ultimately just tightened her grip on the divorce papers in her bag, nodding faintly. "Yes, I went to prepare a gift. Divorce papers, quite the gift." Hugh nodded indifferently. "Tomorrow I'm taking Elva skiing in Switzerland, so today I'm taking you out for our anniversary." He glanced at his wristwatch. "I've reserved the rooftop at La Maison. You can give me the gift later. Let's go now." With that, he picked up the suit jacket draped over the chair and turned to walk out the door. Delia remained standing in place, hesitating to move. Only after stepping outside did he realize she hadn't followed. Frowning, he looked back at her. "What are you waiting for?" Delia parted her lips slightly, but in the end, she didn't truthfully say the words. "I'm about to leave." After a moment of silence, she made an excuse, saying, "I still have some things to take care of. You go ahead. I'll be there later." Fortunately, Hugh didn't notice anything amiss. He simply responded with a faint, and left directly. Delia stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching his black sedan drive out of the courtyard and eventually disappear around the corner. It was the first time in 3 years that he remembered their wedding anniversary, yet it was also the first time she no longer cared. Slowly, she took out the brand-new divorce certificate from her bag and placed it on the coffee table. Then, carrying the already packed luggage, she gently closed the door and turned to leave. On the coffee table, the divorce certificate lay quietly, next to the check she had never cashed. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling window, illuminating the dizzying number of zeros after the figure. Enough to buy back neither a hand-knitted shawl nor 3 years of genuine affection. The lights of La Maison still shone brilliantly. Hugh checked his watch for the 3rd time, his brows involuntarily furrowing. "Mr." Hugh, shall I contact Miss Delia for you? The manager inquired respectfully. Hugh waved his hand. No need. He took out his phone and found that Delia still hadn't replied to his message. This wasn't like her. In the past, she would always respond to his messages immediately. He frowned and got up to leave the restaurant. The night breeze brushed against his face, and for some reason, a trace of unease welled up in his heart. When he pushed open the door, the room was completely silent. Hugh frowned as he glanced around, and two items quietly lying on the coffee table immediately caught his attention. Divorce papers, and the check he gave. Hugh's pupils contracted violently, his heart gripped as if by an invisible hand. He almost tremblingly picked up the divorce certificate, repeatedly verifying the date on it. It was today. Delia, he murmured, his voice laced with an unease he hadn't even noticed himself. The phone rang abruptly, the screen displaying the name, Elva. Hugh. Elva's sweet voice came through the receiver. Where are you? I made your favorite dish. Could you come over and keep me company? At home. Hugh answered instinctively, his gaze still fixed on that divorce certificate. Then I'll bring it to you right now, Elva said cheerfully, hanging up before he could refuse. 20 minutes later, Elva walked into the living room in high heels and immediately spotted the divorce certificate on the coffee table. Oh my God. She dramatically covered her mouth and took 2 steps back. What does she mean by this? She wants a divorce from you. Hugh sat on the sofa and nodded expressionlessly. Elva flashed a hint of triumph in her eyes, but quickly replaced it with a worried expression. She gently sat down beside Hugh, her eyes slightly reddening. I'm sorry, Hugh. Is she still holding a grudge because I accidentally ruined her shawl? I know a woman's jealousy can be strong, but I never thought she would threaten you with divorce. Hugh's fingers unconsciously traced the edge of the divorce papers, and for the first time, he didn't comfort her. Hugh. Elva tilted her head, studying his expression, a pang of unease creeping into her heart. Do you still have feelings for her? If so, I can go apologize. I'll even kneel and beg her if I have to. Reluctant to part. How could that be? Hugh let out a cold laugh, his tone deliberately scornful. Just a tool for a political marriage. Don't overthink it. It was never your fault to begin with. You didn't do it on purpose. Elva curled her lips in satisfaction, reaching out to wrap her arms around his waist and nestle into his embrace. Actually, I've always wanted to say that a dull woman like her was never worthy of you. Hugh's body stiffened imperceptibly for a moment before quickly relaxing as he reached out to tousle Elva's hair. But Elva suddenly sat up straight and asked with feigned innocence, why wouldn't she even take the check? Could it be she's found someone else? Hugh's eyes instantly turned cold. Oh, I was just joking. Elva quickly waved her hands. With her personality, who would possibly want her? Besides, she's probably just trying to force you to compromise, since she loves you so much. Hugh stood up and walked to the liquor cabinet to pour himself a glass of whiskey. He tilted his head back and downed the drink in one gulp, the scalding liquid sliding down his throat, yet failing to extinguish the inexplicable restlessness in his heart. Hugh. Elva hugged him from behind. Stop thinking about her. Actually, your divorce is a good thing, isn't it? Elva. Hugh gently pulled her hands away. I just want to be alone today. Elva pouted. But, be good. I'll take you shopping tomorrow and buy you that bag you love the most. Okay. Hugh forced a smile. After Elva left reluctantly, Hugh stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing at the night outside. After a long while, he took out his phone and dialed his assistant's number. Find out Delia's whereabouts. His voice was hoarse, the rising panic in his heart threatening to consume him. Don't alert anyone. After hanging up the phone, Hugh's gaze fell once more on that divorce certificate. This was the ending they had agreed upon from the very beginning. So why did his heart feel so hollow now? He recalled every little moment from these past 3 years. The stomach-nourishing porridge she woke up early to make for him each morning, the lamp she left on when waiting for him late at night, and the way she quietly stayed by his side, unable to hide her affection. Damn it. He suddenly hurled the wine glass violently against the wall, sending shards of glass flying everywhere. It shouldn't be like this. Clearly her leaving was supposed to be good for him, wasn't it? Hugh stood by the floor-to-ceiling window. The cigarette between his fingers had burned to its end, yet he remained oblivious. The assistant's call came at 2 in the morning. Mr. Hugh, we've located Miss Delia's address. He abruptly stubbed out the cigarette. Send it to me. Delia's new apartment was in an ordinary, old residential complex without an elevator. and the stairwell was narrow. Hugh stood in front of the door, his brow furrowed. He couldn't imagine that the woman who had lived in comfort at the Osmond household would choose such a place. He raised his hand and knocked, neither too lightly nor too heavily, but with an undeniable sense of pressure. From inside came the faint sound of footsteps, followed by the turning of the door lock. Delia pulled open the door, and her pupils constricted sharply the moment she saw him. She was dressed in simple loungewear, her hair loosely tied back, devoid of any elaborate makeup, yet somehow irresistibly captivating. Hugh let his gaze linger on her for 2 seconds before letting out a cold laugh. What? Living in a place like this? Is it some kind of act for my benefit? Delia tightened her fingers slightly, but her expression remained calm. Mr. Hugh, is there something you need? Got a problem? He scoffed, pushing past her and striding into the room. The apartment was small, just one bedroom and a living room, but neatly kept. On the coffee table lay a few design books and a steaming cup of floral tea. Hugh scanned the scene, and the inexplicable irritation in his chest grew stronger. Got the divorce papers and couldn't wait to move out. He turned, looking down at her with a condescending gaze. What? Afraid I'd change my mind. Delia gently closed the door, her tone indifferent. Mr. Hugh, you're joking. Ours was always a contractual marriage. Divorcing when the term ended is perfectly normal. Normal. He narrowed his eyes, suddenly taking a step closer. Then why did you refuse the check? Delia looked up at him, her clear gaze piercing his heart like a thorn. No need, she said softly. Mr. Hugh's belongings. I don't want to take a single thing. Hugh drew a sharp, stifled breath. The words were like a blunt knife, slowly carving open his chest. He stared at her, then suddenly laughed coldly. Delia, do you really think a divorce will free you from me? Delia frowned slightly. Mr. Hugh, what do you mean? Hugh stared into her eyes and said word by word. Come back. The position of MS. Osmond is still yours. The atmosphere around them froze for a moment. Delia froze for a moment, then let out a mocking laugh. Go back. Go back for what? To continue being the shield between you and Elva, her and I. That's none of your business. Right. None of my business. Delia nodded, her blazing eyes fixed on the visibly irritated Hugh. So, Mr. Hugh, on what grounds are you demanding I go back now? Hugh was momentarily left speechless by her question. Yeah, from what position? They're already divorced. This realization inexplicably tightened his chest. Delia. His voice was low, carrying a warning tone. Don't test my patience. Delia gazed at him quietly, suddenly finding it somewhat ridiculous. 3 years had passed, yet he remained the same, always aloof, always expecting her to comply with his wishes. Mr. Hugh. She raised her voice, enunciating each word clearly. We're over. Hugh's pupils constricted sharply. At that very moment, his phone suddenly rang. On the screen, the 2 characters, Elva, stood out glaringly. Delia glanced over, the corners of her lips curling into a faint smile. Mr. Hugh, your sweetheart is looking for you. Hugh stared at her, let out a cold laugh, but still pressed the answer button. Hugh. Elva's sickly sweet voice came through the receiver. Where are you? I can't sleep. I miss you. Hugh's gaze remained fixed on Delia's face, but his tone deliberately softened. I'm handling something. I'll be back later. Delia turned her face away, no longer looking at him. Then hurry up. Elva cooed. I'll be waiting. After hanging up the phone, Hugh stared at Delia's profile before suddenly reaching out to grip her chin, forcing her to look at him. Delia, he said in a low voice. Don't think this is over. With that, he released her and turned to leave. The door slammed shut with such force that the hanging picture on the wall trembled slightly. Delia stood rooted to the spot for a long moment before slowly raising her hand to wipe away the unshed tear at the corner of her eye. Hugh slammed into the car seat and punched the steering wheel. He didn't understand why he'd lost control like this. They'd agreed from the very beginning, divorce after 3 years. The person he clearly loves is Elva. But why does he feel so furious when he sees her acting so nonchalant? His phone rang again. Elva sent a message. Hugh, when are you coming back? He stared at the screen, suddenly feeling a wave of irritation. Finally, he replied. Something came up tonight. Won't be coming back. Then, he turned off his phone, leaned back in the chair, and closed his eyes. His mind was filled with Delia's eyes, so calm they were almost indifferent. Delia changed her address once again. This new apartment was still quite small, But she had used a friend's identity to secure the lease and had asked her family to completely erase any traces of her whereabouts. In the short term, Hugh won't be able to find him. The new apartment she rented this time is still small, but it gets plenty of sunlight. Standing by the window, she watched the bustling street below and felt a long-lost sense of freedom for the first time. This time, she cut off all contact, taking only her identification documents and a bank card with her savings. She didn't take any of those expensive jewelry or designer clothes. All she wanted now was a fresh start. She dialed the number of her old friend Evelyn. "Delia," came Evelyn's surprised voice from the other end of the line. "You finally contacted me. Where have you been these 3 years? I only knew you married into the Osmond family, and then you completely disappeared. Did the Osmond family deliberately hide you away? I almost thought you'd vanished from the face of the earth." Delia let out a light laugh. "It's a long story. Are you still doing design work now?" "Of course. My studio has gained quite a reputation now," Evelyn said proudly, then lowered her voice. "You suddenly reached out to me. Is something wrong?" Delia after a moment of silence. She ultimately didn't mention the events of the past 3 years, only skirting the issue by saying, "I want a fresh start. I need a job." Evelyn agreed without hesitation. "Then come to my studio tomorrow to report in." Evelyn's studio is located in an old office building in the city center, with minimalist yet artistic decor. Delia pushed open the glass door. Evelyn immediately rushed over and hugged her. "Oh my God, how did you lose so much weight?" Evelyn patted her shoulder sympathetically, then waved her hand with feigned nonchalance. "Never mind. From today onward, you're my chief designer." Delia frowned slightly with a hint of hesitation, then immediately shook her head. "I'll start from scratch." Evelyn casually patted her shoulder and said, "You were a design prodigy in college. I always regretted that you didn't join my studio back then. Now that you're finally here, of course I can't let your talent go to waste." Delia she couldn't bring herself to keep making excuses. She sat at her assigned workstation, her fingertips gently gliding over the brand new drawing tablet, as if touching a long-lost dream. Before marriage, her greatest passion was sitting in front of the drawing board, sketching out her ideas. But after 3 years of marriage, she never touched that old companion again. In the days that followed, she devoted herself wholeheartedly to design. During the day, I follow the team to learn the latest industry trends, and at night, I stay up late revising blueprints. Her design style is unique, blending classical elegance with modern minimalism, quickly standing out in the studio's internal selection. A month later, Evelyn burst into her office excitedly. "Delia, your Starry River collection has been selected for the International Design Exhibition." Delia froze, then couldn't hide her excitement. "Really? Absolutely true." Evelyn waved the invitation in her hand, her voice rising 2 pitches with excitement. "The exhibition in Paris next month. You must go in person." Delia took the invitation, her fingertips trembling slightly. Her long-held dream had always been to see her work on an international stage one day. She just never expected that day would come so soon. How many things had she missed during those long 3 years? Fortunately, it's not too late to start anew now. What she didn't know was that at this moment, at the Osmond family's corporate headquarters, Hugh was flipping through the latest issue of a design magazine when his gaze suddenly fixed on a particular page. Beside the design drawings of the Starry River series, the designer's name was prominently printed. D. His fingers unconsciously tightened, crumpling the paper into creases. "D," he murmured under his breath, his gaze dark and unreadable. The assistant stood nearby, cautiously saying, "Mr. Hugh, this designer is a newcomer who has recently made a name for themselves with a very unique style. It's said that." "Look it up," Hugh interrupted him, his voice icy. "I want complete information on this person." The assistant nodded and left, Hugh still staring at that design drawing. So similar, those fluid lines, the handling of details, even that restrained yet tension-filled style, all resembled the works of Delia he had once seen. After that day's meeting, he had left in a hurry. Later, he intended to find Delia again, only to discover she had vanished without a trace. He asked his assistant to investigate, but this time, no matter what, they couldn't find any sign of her. Now, it seems he has found a new lead. Coincidence, he murmured to himself, feeling an indescribable restlessness welling up in his heart. Outside the window, the night was deep, and the city lights sparkled like a galaxy. Yet they couldn't illuminate the emptiness in his heart. Osmond family at the group headquarters. The atmosphere in the meeting room was so tense it was almost suffocating. The CFO slammed the financial report heavily on the table, voice trembling. Mr. Hugh, the Moyu project has already incurred losses of 2 billion, and the bank just notified us that they're freezing our liquid assets. Hugh sat at the head of the table, brows tightly furrowed. 3 months ago, Elva coquettishly said she wanted to establish her own fashion brand. Without proper evaluation, he approved massive funding. Now the project has stalled. Partners are withdrawing investments one after another, and the Osmond family's cash flow has suddenly become critically tight. First, contact Swiss Bank and mortgage some equity shares, he ordered coldly. But that's the Osmond family's last resort. The CFO was so anxious that sweat beaded on his forehead. The board of directors. I said, do it. Hugh swept a glance across the room, and everyone fell silent in fear. The Osmond family ancestral home was in complete chaos at this moment. What is this? Hugh's mom stormed into the living room clutching a stack of transfer records. Her well-maintained face twisted with anger. Elva was lazily applying nail polish on the couch when she heard the noise. Raising her head sluggishly, she said, Auntie, what brings you here? Slap. A harsh slap landed across her face. You wretch. How dare you embezzle the Osmond family's money to buy a private island? Hugh's mom shook the evidence in her hand. And these jewelry auction records. All assets under Hugh's name. Elva covered her face, tears instantly welling up. I was just borrowing it temporarily. Hugh promised I could spend it however I wanted. That was the Osmond family's effort of generations. Hugh's mom trembled with rage, suddenly clutching her chest as she staggered backward. The butler hurriedly supported her, shouting in panic, Madam, call an ambulance quickly. Amid the wail of ambulance sirens, Elva quickly sent a message. Hugh, your mom suddenly fainted. She seems to have misunderstood me. I'm so scared. Outside the VIP hospital room, the board elders blocked the hurriedly arriving Hugh. Hugh, your mother had a heart attack because of that woman. Director Wang pointed at the heavily tubed Hugh's mom through the glass window. Now the group's funding chain is broken, and you still want to protect that troublemaker. Hugh loosened his tie, his tone icy. Elva is innocent. She couldn't do such a thing. As for the funding issue, I'll handle it. Handle it. By mortgaging the family estate. Director Lee slammed the table and stood up. We just discovered that woman registered a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The ward door suddenly opened. Elva rushed into Hugh's arms with reddened eyes. They're all framing me. I just wanted to help share your burden by learning to invest. Hugh instinctively held her, his gaze sweeping over the board members. Where's the evidence? The board members fell silent. Elva had long since erased all traces of the transfers. Those overseas accounts couldn't be traced back to her name at all. Enough. Hugh picked up the sobbing Elva. We'll discuss the group matters tomorrow. At the end of the corridor, Elva's lips curled slightly as she buried her face in the man's shoulder. In the dead of night at Osmond family's headquarters office, the assistant mustered courage to report. Swiss Bank demands we replenish the margin within 3 days, or they'll force liquidation. Hugh stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, with the city's lights at his feet. Yet none could illuminate the gloom in his eyes. The phone screen lit up, showing Elva's shopping list. The latest haute couture jewelry, priced equivalent to a villa. He closed his eyes briefly and pressed the transfer button. The assistant hesitated, then handed over a document. One more thing. That designer D. We've found her temporary address at the Paris Design Exhibition. Hugh whirled around, sending the documents scattering across the floor. The woman in the photo stood before the exhibition stand in a white dress. Her features as exquisite as a painting. It was Delia, who had been missing for 3 months. Outside the window, a thunderclap erupted at that very moment. It was raining. The night in Paris glittered with lights, and inside a 5-star hotel along the Champs-Élysées, a business cocktail party hosted by the International Design Association was in full swing. The crystal chandeliers refracted dazzling light, while amidst the clinking of glasses, elegantly dressed guests mingled. A gathering of celebrities and luminaries. Delia was dressed in a silver-white mermaid gown, her slightly curled long hair cascading over her shoulders, and her earlobes adorned with minimalist diamond studs. She looked like a goddess who had stepped out of the starry sky. Holding a champagne glass, she was chatting and laughing with several international brand design directors, exuding confidence and elegance in every gesture. Delia, your starry sky collection is truly breathtaking, a French designer praised. The fluid lines make it seem as if you're wearing the Milky Way itself. Delia smiled faintly and was about to respond when she suddenly sensed a sharp gaze upon her. She tilted her head slightly, her brows furrowing in a faint frown. It was Hugh, dressed in a well-tailored black suit. His expression was cold and his gaze locked onto her like a hawk's. Beside him, Elva held his arm, clad in a pink chiffon dress with a sweet smile that froze the moment she saw Delia. Delia quickly averted her gaze, resuming her conversation with others as if she had never seen them. However, Hugh walked straight toward her. Delia. The surrounding designers sensed the tension and tactfully stepped back a few paces. Delia looked up, her lips curving into a polite yet distant smile. Mr. Hugh, long time no see. Are you avoiding me on purpose? Hugh stared into her eyes, his tone laced with suppressed anger. Delia let out a light laugh, swirling the champagne in her hand. Mr. Hugh, you must be joking. We've been divorced for a long time. How could there be any avoiding between us? Hugh frowned deeply. Behind them, Elva quickly caught up in her high heels, intimately linking arms with Hugh and feigning surprise as she looked at Delia. Oh my, isn't this Miss Delia? I never expected to see you here. She gave Delia a once-over, covering her lips with a light laugh. It seems you've been doing quite well since the divorce. Managing to sneak into an event like this. Delia remained unfazed, merely glancing at her coolly. Has Miss Elva grown accustomed to spouting nonsense? If I was invited here, it's naturally because I qualify. Elva flashed a hint of jealousy in her eyes, her eyelids slightly reddening as she pouted. What qualifications could you possibly have? Did you get in through some special connections? She deliberately emphasized the words, special relationship, drawing sidelong glances from those around her. Hugh frowned slightly and scolded in a low voice. Elva, stop fooling around. Elva, however, seemed oblivious, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. Hugh, I was just a little curious. Are you protecting her now? Clearly, Miss Delia hadn't even touched the door of the design circle before. How did she suddenly become a rising star designer? Can't I even say a word about it? Miss Delia, are you still blaming me and Hugh? But back then, it wasn't what you thought. Hugh and I were just friends at the time. Delia's expression remained unchanged as she calmly looked at Elva. I'm not interested in the relationship between Miss Elva and Mr. Hugh. However, it seems to me that Miss Elva can't seem to forget about me. You know so much about my past. How could you not know I was the top student in the design department during college? Elva choked back a retort and instinctively sneered. Who knows if you earned it through connections? Delia unhurriedly took out a gold-embossed business card from her handbag and handed it to a well-known brand director beside her. Since Miss Elva doubts my abilities, perhaps everyone should take a look at this. The director took the card and exclaimed in surprise. You're the winner of this year's Milan design competition. A wave of astonished murmurs instantly spread through the crowd. If she isn't qualified, then who is? I was just about to say. I've never even heard of this so-called Miss Elva. She's the one who crashed this event, isn't she? I suspect it's pure jealousy. Didn't you hear the undertones? This Ms. Lynn is clearly no simple character. She likely interfered in someone else's marriage before and still refuses to admit it. Elva's face stiffened as she tearfully threw herself into Hugh's arms. No, that's not it. Hugh, I truly didn't mean it that way. Delia smiled faintly, her gaze steady. Mr. Hugh, Miss Elva, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave now. With that, she turned gracefully, preparing to leave. Hugh abruptly pushed Elva aside, gripping her wrist as his voice lowered. We need to talk. Delia paused mid-step, glanced down at his hand, and replied coldly, Mr. Hugh, please behave yourself. Hugh darkened his gaze, yet his grip remained firm. Elva quickly stepped forward upon seeing this, grabbing Hugh's other hand with a look of concern for his sake. Hugh, don't we still have to meet Mr. Smith? Let's not waste any more time. Hugh ignored her request for the first time, his gaze still fixed on Delia's face. Just 5 minutes. Delia gently freed her hand from his and spoke indifferently. Sorry, I have an appointment with a business partner. Excuse me. With those words, she walked away without looking back toward a group of international designers nearby, her back straight and her steps composed. Hugh stood in place, his eyes dark as ink. Elva gritted her teeth and glared at Delia before turning to Hugh with a coquettish tone. Hugh, why is she like this? Is she still blaming me? But, Hugh glanced at her, slightly furrowing his brows, his voice tinged with impatience. You should go back first. What? I said, you should go back first. The impatience in his eyes grew even more evident. Elva tears instantly fell from her eyes. You're going to look for her. But Hugh didn't even glance at her, simply striding in the direction where Delia had left. Elva stood rooted to the spot, her nails digging deep into her palms, her eyes filled with jealousy and resentment. Meanwhile, Delia was chatting cheerfully with several designers, completely unaware of the commotion behind her. It wasn't until a shadow fell over her that she slightly turned her gaze, realizing Hugh had somehow appeared behind her. Delia. His voice was low. Between us, I never said it was over. Mr. Hugh, I heard the Osmond family is facing some minor troubles now. Delia hadn't spoken yet when Evelyn swiftly pulled her behind, narrowing his eyes slightly. Instead of obsessing over your ex-wife here, you'd better think about how to clean up the mess you've made. To act this foolishly over a woman. I'm truly glad Delia left you long ago. What do you mean? His eyes turned icy, a suppressed fury simmering in his low voice. I believe Mr. Hugh's company directors have already warned you too. That woman by your side. Just how much has she been scheming behind your back? Are you really going to keep playing the fool? The fractured light refracted through the champagne tower danced across the crowd. Yet the elegant violin melodies couldn't mask the tension crackling in this corner. Evelyn swirled her champagne glass, a mocking curve playing at the corner of her lips as she continued. Your White Lotus has nearly emptied the company, yet you still have the leisure to attend cocktail parties. Hugh darkened his gaze, his knuckles tightening around the glass. Miss Evelyn, mind your words. Oh, did I say something wrong? Evelyn let out a cold laugh, pulling Delia behind her. The funds Elva has siphoned from the Osmond family over the past 3 months could buy an entire island, couldn't they? The gazes of the surrounding guests drifted over subtly, and whispers gradually rose. Delia frowned and lightly tugged at Evelyn's sleeve. Evelyn, let's go. If he's not afraid of losing face, why can't I say it? Evelyn's voice suddenly rose. Hugh, messed up the company for a woman, and now he still has the nerve to pester you. Hugh's jaw tightened as he firmly grasped Delia's wrist. We need to talk. Let her go. Evelyn abruptly slapped his hand away. The divorce papers are already signed. Mr. Hugh, what kind of act are you putting on? The guests' gazes grew increasingly intense, some even raising their phones to record. Delia took a deep breath. Come with me. In the garden, the night breeze carried the fragrance of roses as it brushed against their faces. The sound of the fountain water drowned out the clamor of the banquet. Yet it couldn't extinguish the tension crackling between them. Delia. Hugh spoke in a hoarse voice, reaching out to grab her. It's really not what you think. That doesn't matter. Delia took 2 steps back to avoid his touch. Hugh, we're over. I can't be bothered to dwell on what happened before. From now on, please stay out of my life. Delia, there should be limits to your nonsense. He took a step forward, his voice tinged with impatience due to Delia's repeated refusals. I never thought about divorcing you. It's just that Elva is alone and helpless, and I have to take care of her. Can't you stop being so jealous? Snap. The crisp sound of a slap startled the nightingales perched on the tree branches. Evelyn shook her numb hand and sneered. Take care of her. Is your so-called taking care letting her squander company funds? Letting her move into your marital home? Letting her flaunt the jewelry you gave her on social media? There are countless lonely and helpless people in the world. Why don't you take care of all of them? Hugh tilted his head, tongue pressing against his burning cheek, his eyes dark with a brewing storm. What do you know? Elva is different. She what? Evelyn snapped sharply. She's an orphan. She's all alone in the world. She pulled out her phone from her handbag, her fingers swiping forcefully across the screen. See what your white moonlight has been up to lately. Photos scrolled one by one across the screen. Elva snuggled up to a middle-aged tycoon on a private yacht. She pushed chips to a blonde man in a casino. The most glaring was her walking into a hotel arm-in-arm with the Osmond family's rival. The timestamp showing just 3 days ago. This can't be. Hugh's pupils contracted violently as he staggered back 2 steps. Why do you think she suddenly returned to the country? Evelyn pressed forward relentlessly. Because her so-called gambler father was entirely fabricated. She racked up massive gambling debts abroad herself and fled back to escape loan sharks. Delia jerked her head up, a flash of shock also crossing her eyes. Hugh's face turned as pale as paper, veins bulging at his temples. You're lying, whether it's a lie or not. Mr. Hugh, why don't you check for yourself? Evelyn pulled Delia over and soothingly patted her arm. Mr. Hugh, don't put on an act with me now. All that talk about just looking after her. It was only because you wanted to have your cake and eat it too. But you never expected Delia to break free from your control, which is why you're so desperate. Right, Delia. It's not what she said. He frantically looked toward the silent Delia, his Adam's apple bobbing with difficulty. I didn't know about any of that. It doesn't matter anymore. Hugh, it's best if we just go our separate ways from now on. After saying this, Delia grabbed Evelyn and left without looking back. Watching her resolute figure, Hugh revealed a trace of pain in his eyes. Trembling, he pulled out his phone from his pocket and dialed his assistant's number. Find out everything about Elva over the past few years. I must know who's lying. Hugh stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, his fingertips clutching a freshly delivered investigation report. The rain poured relentlessly outside the window, the winding trails of water on the glass blurring the city lights. When he first heard about this from Evelyn, suspicion toward Elva arose in his heart. So the first thing he did after returning to the country was to obtain from his assistant Elva's movements from the time she went abroad until now. Are you certain there are no errors in these documents? His voice was low, carrying an oppressive sense of impending storm. The assistant stood rigidly by his side, his back straight as a rod. We've verified it 3 times. There are indeed signs of forgery in Miss Elva's mother's medical records. The doctor's signature on that leukemia diagnosis. It simply doesn't exist. Hugh's knuckles turned white, crumpling the paper with his grip. Continue. We also discovered that Miss Elva had close interactions with several wealthy businessmen during her time abroad. This is her alternate account on social media, filled with photos flaunting luxury items, all posted during the period she claimed to be financially struggling. Hugh took the tablet, where the screen displayed a selfie of Elva wearing a diamond necklace, captioned, "Thanks for the gift, darling, love you." The date displayed was exactly the week when he mortgaged the property to treat her mother's illness. His gaze suddenly turned icy. Call her here. Half an hour later, the office door was pushed open. Hugh. Elva walked in wearing high heels, her skirt swaying gracefully. Calling me over so late. Did you miss me? Her smile froze instantly upon seeing the scattered documents on the table. Hugh slowly turned around and pushed a photo toward her. Do you know this person? In the photo, Elva was intimately nestled in the arms of a bald man, with a Las Vegas casino in the background. This is. Her body trembled uncontrollably as she suddenly lunged forward to grab his arm. Hugh, listen to me. He's just a business partner of my cousin, and he insisted on taking a photo with me. What about this one? Hugh flung out another photo. Elva lying in a bikini on a yacht, surrounded by 3 men. The date showed it was during her mother's critical illness. Period. Elva's already pale face drained completely of color. And this. Hugh played a phone recording, her coquettish voice coming through clearly. Hugh is so easy to fool. I told him my mom needed a bone marrow transplant and he agreed right away. When I said I was short on money, he gave it to me directly. He even handed over project funds without even looking at the made-up proposal. Once we get that money, we'll go to the Maldives. No, this isn't me. Elva suddenly screamed, tears streaming down her face. Someone must be framing me. Hugh, believe me. Hugh suddenly gripped her chin, his crimson eyes filled with fury. The medical report was also fake. Your mother wasn't sick at all. She. Elva kept avoiding his gaze. Seeing there was no way to argue, she suddenly broke free from his hold. Yes. So what if I lied to you? The tears on her face instantly dried up as she forced a mocking smile. You think you're so great, cold as a block of wood. If it weren't for your money, who'd bother putting on this act with you? Hugh narrowed his eyes dangerously. I was after your money from the very beginning. Ever since we started dating, I originally planned to marry into your family. But who knew you'd be so useless? I had to find some random excuse to break up with you and take a hefty sum to enjoy myself. Pity it wasn't quite enough for my spending spree. But no matter. All I had to do was crook my finger. And you came running back without hesitation. My friend was right about you. You really are my lapdog. You're asking for death. Oh, don't be angry, Elva taunted, leaning closer as she pulled a USB drive from her bag and waved it. Don't forget, I know plenty of Osmond family secrets, like that recent batch of illegal money. Hugh's sullen expression froze abruptly as he instinctively reached out to snatch the USB drive from her hand. Elva, however, remained unfazed and even extended the USB drive toward him. Mr. Hugh, I'm not like you. I've always been wary of you. This is just one of the backups. Care to guess how many copies I've made and where I've hidden them? Outside, a thunderclap roared. and the stark white light from the lightning illuminated the naked malice in her eyes. If anything happens to me, the Osmond family will definitely go down with me. In the top-floor conference room of the Osmond family conglomerate, the floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a gloomy sky outside. The constantly fluctuating numbers on the projector screen were like sharp knives, slowly dismembering the Osmond family's century-old foundation piece by piece. It's hit the limit down again. The CFO's voice trembled. The bank just notified us they're terminating cooperation and demanding early repayment of the loans. The director's gazes shot uniformly toward Hugh. Their once fawning eyes now filled only with anger and contempt. Mr. Hugh. A director slammed the table and stood up. Elva has exposed those scandals. You must give us an explanation. Hugh's knuckles pressed against the conference table, veins bulging. 3 days ago, he had let Elva go because of those threats. But he never expected that woman, after realizing he wouldn't spend another dime on her, would immediately go into hiding and then expose all the dirty secrets. Have you found out where she is? His voice was hoarse beyond recognition. The assistant lowered his head. The last surveillance footage showed her going to the airport, but the boarding records were erased. The Swiss bank confirmed she transferred the last 200 million in liquid assets from the account. The meeting room fell into dead silence. Hugh suddenly grabbed his suit jacket and walked out. Mr. Hugh, where are you going? The board meeting hasn't. Meeting adjourned. The elevator descended directly to the underground garage. Hugh got into the driver's seat as his phone screen lit up, displaying Evelyn's studio address. Wait, Delia pushed open the glass door of the studio, and as she looked up, she saw the figure standing at the reception desk, her footsteps pausing slightly. Hugh's suit was crumpled beyond recognition, with a stubble of dark beard shadowing his chin. The moment he saw her, a flicker of desperate hope flashed through his eyes. Delia. She handed the umbrella to her assistant and said calmly, Mr. Hugh, is there something you need? Hugh swallowed hard. Can we talk alone? Let's talk here. Delia motioned for her assistant to leave but did not invite him into the inner room. I have a meeting in 5 minutes. Raindrops dripped from Hugh's hair, leaving dark stains on the carpet. Never before had he realized so clearly that the woman who always kept a light on for him now wouldn't even offer him a cup of tea. The Osmond family's situation. You must have heard. His voice was hoarse as he lowered his noble head for the first time. You were right. I shouldn't have indulged that woman. Now I need the Raymond family's resources. Delia let out a soft humph and looked up from her pile of documents. So Mr. Hugh is here to borrow money. Not just money. Hugh took a step forward. The Raymond family still has connections in political and business circles. You're the only one who'd be willing to help me now. Would I be willing to help you? Delia closed the folder, her gaze as cold as ice. Mr. Hugh, have you forgotten we're already divorced? The words struck Hugh like a slap across the face. He suddenly grabbed her wrist. When you were at the Osmond family's, I treated you well. Help me just this once. Name your terms. Delia glanced at his hand and suddenly laughed. Mr. Hugh, now you want to negotiate terms. Too bad. I have no interest in saving the Osmond family. Delia, Hugh pleaded, his voice trembling and softening. I'm begging you. Please. The man who never said, please, now stood before her with red-rimmed eyes. Delia felt a momentary daze, remembering how many late nights she had waited for him to come home with the same humility. Beg me. She let out a light laugh. Truth be told, I begged you many times back then. But dear Mr. Hugh, not every plea is granted. That was true for me then, and it's true for you now. Every question stabbed at Hugh's heart like a knife. He wanted to defend himself, but found every word to be true. Hugh. Delia picked up her briefcase. I'm sorry about your current situation, but it's not my responsibility. She walked toward the door, her back straight. Just like you used to say, it's just a business marriage. Don't take it too seriously. Amid the sound of the glass door opening and closing, Hugh stood frozen in place. The studio assistant hurried in through the door. Miss Delia, the tickets for Milan Design Week have been booked. Your flight is at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you. Delia's voice faded into the distance. By the way, don't let unrelated people in from now on. Outside the window, the rain grew heavier. Hugh's phone suddenly vibrated with a financial news alert. Osmond Family Group's stock price plummets 60%. Founder Hugh's net worth shrinks drastically, nearing bankruptcy. He looked up toward Delia's departing direction, when suddenly a Chinese idiom occupied his mind. Both love and money are lost. Hugh sat in the study, Outside the window was a gloomy rainy day. The TV screen was lit. The financial channel was broadcasting a special report. Rising star designer D wins Milan International Design Gold Award. Her brand, Starry River, valued over $1 billion. On camera, Delia stands on the podium in a white suit, smiling. Her eyes sparkle like stars, every gesture exuding confidence and ease. When asked about her secret to success, she softly spoke into the microphone. First, learn to love yourself. Hugh's fingers tightened unconsciously, trembling uncontrollably at the tips. It is reported that Dee recently established the Delia Foundation, dedicated to funding entrepreneurship for disadvantaged women. So far, it has helped over 300 women achieve financial independence. The voice from the television gradually faded into obscurity. Hugh stood up, staggering toward that long dusty room, Delia's former bedroom. Opening the door, a faint scent of jasmine wafted over, as if she had just been here yesterday. On the dressing table lay the half-used hand cream she left behind, and in the wardrobe hung a few home clothes she forgot to take. Hugh found himself inexplicably picking up a beige knit sweater, the fabric still carrying a lingering, elusive fragrance. Suddenly he remembered, 3 winters ago when he came home from overtime work in the early hours, Delia had been wearing this very sweater, waiting for him on the sofa until she fell asleep. Seeing him return, she rubbed her eyes and went to the kitchen to heat up porridge, accidentally burning the back of her hand. This kind of thing seemed to happen frequently during their 3 years of marriage, yet he had turned a blind eye to it all those years. Bang! The sound of the door closing downstairs snapped him back to reality. The butler stood at the door, looking troubled. Young master, the bank people are here again. They said if the loan isn't repaid by next week, they'll initiate the collateral auction process. Hugh waved his hand to indicate he understood. After the butler left, he collapsed onto Delia's dressing stool. The mirror reflected a haggard face, sunken eyes, unkempt stubble. Where was the former vigor of the Osmond family CEO? His phone vibrated. A message from a board member. Hugh, I've watched you grow up. So out of years of friendship, I'm warning you. The board has passed a resolution to remove you as chairman next week. You're on your own now. Hugh let out a bitter laugh, his gaze falling on the corner of a piece of paper peeking out from the dressing table drawer. He opened the drawer and found a handwritten journal. Delia, her delicate handwriting densely recorded everything about him. March 15th. Hugh had a stomachache. Remember to cook millet porridge every day. May 20th. His allergy season for pollen has arrived. Keep medicine in the car. July 8th. Wedding anniversary. Finally bought the cufflinks he liked. The last page stopped a week before their divorce. Tomorrow is Hugh's birthday. The watch I bought for him has finally arrived. The cake should be Black Forest. He doesn't like things too sweet and is allergic to peanuts. I hope without the birthday parties I prepared, they'll remember. Hugh's vision suddenly blurred. He suddenly remembered that birthday. Delia gave him that watch, which he thoughtlessly threw into the trash in public just to please Elva. Now it occurred to him. The design of that watch was clearly the limited edition he'd casually mentioned liking. A sudden burst of applause came from the television. Hugh looked up and saw Delia being interviewed by international media. A reporter asked, Ms. Delia, you were once married. Did that experience have any impact on your career? On camera, Delia smiled slightly and said, I believe it did affect me. At the very least, that marriage taught me the most important lesson. Never give up yourself for anyone. Hugh slammed the TV shut. In the silent room, only the sound of rain tapping against the window could be heard. He looked at his reflection in the mirror and suddenly remembered Delia's retreating figure on the day she left. Her straight back, resolute steps, without a trace of hesitation. When exactly had she made up her mind to leave? Was it when he didn't hesitate to donate bone marrow? Or when he abandoned her time and again for Elva? Or when she was being unfairly punished by her mother? Outside the window, the rain grew heavier. The circuit in the Osmond family's villa suddenly tripped, plunging the entire room into darkness. Yet Hugh remained motionless, sitting at Delia's dressing table. Only when he raised his hand did he feel the cold liquid on his face in the dark. At last, he understood. The most painful punishment in this world isn't bankruptcy, nor being abandoned by all. It's when you finally wake up to realize that the person who once cherished you as their life has now become someone far beyond your reach. But he didn't want to give up. Clearly she had loved him so much before. How could she abandon him without hesitation over such trivial matters? Delia, you have a meeting with LVMH Group representatives at 10 a.m. today. And there's a Fashion Week event at 3 p.m. I've prepared all the materials. Do you need anything else? Delia was about to respond to her assistant when she suddenly stopped, frowning at the familiar figure standing at the reception. Hugh was wearing a crumpled suit, holding 2 cups of coffee, with dark circles under his eyes. The moment he saw her, his dull eyes suddenly lit up. Delia. He quickened his pace, forcing a smile. I remember you like lattes with double syrup. Delia's gaze lingered on the coffee cup for a second, her lips curling into a sarcastic smirk. I do. But isn't that Elva's preference? Hugh's hand froze mid-air. What do you want? Delia signaled her assistant to leave but showed no intention of inviting him in. I'm in a hurry. I just wanted to talk to you. Hugh pleaded with desperation in his eyes. Just 10 minutes. Talk about what? Delia stood with arms crossed. About how you squandered the last remnants of the Osmond family's fortune. Or about your true love who absconded with the money. But unfortunately, I have no interest in any of this. His Adam's apple bobbed as he suddenly grabbed her wrist. I know I was wrong. Delia, I came to apologize. Give me another chance. Please. Delia abruptly withdrew her hand and let out a cold laugh. So now Mr. Hugh knows to beg me. What did you say back when I told you there was something wrong with Elva? She looked him up and down, mimicking his tone at the time. Elva is naive. She couldn't possibly do such a thing. Hugh's already pale face instantly drained of all color. I was bewitched back then, but I swear nothing substantial ever happened between us. That's not important to me. Delia turned to leave. Move aside. I'm going to be late. Wait. Hugh stopped her, his words suddenly speeding up. We were so good together before. Why do you only remember the times I treated you badly? Do you remember? That year when you had a fever. I stayed with you all night at the hospital. And on your birthday, I deliberately cancelled a meeting to accompany you. Delia suddenly laughed. A laugh that sent chills down Hugh's spine. The reason you stayed all night at the hospital when I had a fever wasn't because your dear Elva had a cold, was it? You even redirected the doctor who was supposed to see me to her, just because she casually mentioned a chest pain. And that birthday trip. The reason you took me to Paris was because Elva was there. And Paris was never where I wanted to go. You bought the tickets and insisted on using my birthday as an excuse to go. Hugh's lips trembled, his eyes filled with panic. I can be a jerk sometimes, but the kindness I showed you all those years wasn't entirely fake. Kindness. What else? Delia looked down at him coldly. Do you mean giving me the necklace Elva didn't want? Or standing outside her apartment all night on Christmas? Hugh was speechless, only managing to clutch helplessly at the hem of her clothes. But I truly know I was wrong now. I really do love you. Love. Delia abruptly shook him off, stepping back to put distance between them. Hugh, you've only ever loved yourself. The only reason you're groveling now is because the Osmond family needs the Raymond family's connections to save themselves. No. Hugh protested urgently. It's not for the Osmond family. We clearly love each other. Why must you be so stubborn? Delia suddenly picked up the coffee he had set aside and without hesitation splashed it in his face. The brown liquid dripped down his chin onto his expensive suit, drawing a gasp from the receptionist. Are you awake? Delia's voice was as cold as ice. Mr. Hugh, the way you look now is truly disgusting. Hugh sat dazed on the floor, coffee dripping from his eyelashes, watching her resolute departing figure. He suddenly remembered how long ago she had also been splashed with a cup of cold water by him. Back then, her eyes were red, yet she still smiled at him and said, "It's okay." And now, she wouldn't even spare him a glance. The assistant jobbed to catch up with Delia ahead. Delia, should we call security? No need. Delia pressed the elevator button without turning her head. Just someone insignificant. On a rainy night in Paris, Hugh huddled on the bed of a cheap hotel in St. Denis. The wallpaper was moldy and peeling, the sheets stained with suspicious marks, while neon lights from outside cast shifting shadows across his pallid face through the grimy window. The phone on the nightstand lit up. It was the 15th debt collection text message. Pay up within 48 hours, or prepare to collect a corpse. His trembling hand grabbed the half-empty whiskey bottle, the cheap alcohol burning his throat as the TV played international news. Elva arrested in Switzerland for cross-border fraud and money laundering, involving up to 230 million euros. The screen cut to Geneva police station. Elva in handcuffs, her carefully styled curls now a tangled mess. When the reporter pressed about the whereabouts of the embezzled funds, she suddenly screamed at the camera. It was all Hugh's doing. All those project funds passed through his hands. Clatter. The wine bottle slipped from Hugh's grasp, the amber liquid soaking into the carpet. He stared at the distorted face on the screen, suddenly recalling their final confrontation in the office 3 months ago. If anything happens to me, the Osmond family will go down with me. She indeed made it happen. Her phone vibrated with a bank email notification. The shares you mortgaged from the Osmond family have entered liquidation proceedings. This meant the century-old Osmond family would completely lose its surname. A violent kicking sound came from outside the door. Thin surnamed bastard. We know you're in there. The heavily accented curses mingled with the sound of pounding on the door. Open up or we'll burn this damn hotel down. Hugh staggered to his feet, and the figure reflected in the mirror made even himself freeze in shock. With sunken eye sockets and streaks of gray in his hair, the once exquisitely tailored suit worth tens of thousands now reeked of sour sweat. Was this still the Osmond family's CEO who once dominated the business world? Crash. The window shattered suddenly, followed by a torch being hurled inside. Flames instantly licked up the curtains. Hugh grabbed his coat and rushed out the door, colliding head-on with the debt-collecting gangsters in the hallway. The burly leader yanked him by the collar. Running. Why don't you keep running? Several men pinned him against the wall together, the cold blade pressing against his throat. The boss says this is your last chance. The other's alcohol-laden breath was hot against his face. We heard you used to dote on that Lynn woman. Here's the deal. Get back the money you transferred to her and hand it over to us, and we'll spare your life. Hugh suddenly laughed, his voice hoarse. I'm looking for that bitch too. Why don't you try asking at Geneva prison? Anyway, you've already taken every penny I could scrape together. The blade sank deep into flesh, warm blood trickling down in rivulets. Just as he thought he would die in this filthy hotel, the wail of police sirens suddenly grew louder, approaching rapidly. Damn it. I told you not to make such a scene. The thugs cursed as they scattered in all directions. Hugh slid down the wall to sit on the ground, covering his face as he burst into laughter, only for sobs to escape through his fingers the next moment. I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Same day Geneva Women's Prison. Elva huddled in the corner of the visitation room, her face no longer adorned with meticulous makeup. When the prison guard informed her that no one was willing to hire a lawyer for her, she suddenly lashed out, splashing water at the surveillance camera. Do you know who I am? I am the future mistress of the Osmond family's empire. Her screams echoed off the concrete walls. When I get out, I won't let any of you off. The prison guard expressionlessly administered a sedative to her. In the last moment of fading consciousness, Elva vaguely saw a figure in the mirror. Her hair was as dry as straw, her eyes streaked with crimson veins, her cheeks sunken, and her complexion a sickly gray. The expensive silk dress had long been replaced by an orange prison jumpsuit. Is this really her? The once elegant goddess who had Hugh completely spellbound. The iron door slammed shut, darkness swallowing all the muffled sobs of resentment. At the Milan Design Week cocktail party, Delia was chatting with several brand representatives when Evelyn suddenly tapped her shoulder from behind. Let me introduce you to someone. She turned around and saw a man in a dark blue suit standing under the crystal chandelier. His silhouette was strikingly clear in the light, and behind his gold-rimmed glasses, his eyes held a gentle smile. This is my brother, Rex. Evelyn blinked, an international lawyer specializing in women's rights cases, just transferred back from Geneva. I've long admired Miss Delia's reputation. Rex extended his hand, his fingertips warm and dry. I've seen your Nirvana series design sketches, those shattered and reassembled lines. Truly breathtaking. Delia froze slightly for a moment. In truth, the vast majority of people preferred the Starry River series, with very few favoring the Nirvana series, let alone being able to discern at a glance the hidden metaphors in her designs. Those years crushed by marriage and then reborn. Attorney and also has an interest in design. I simply appreciate beautiful things. He handed her his business card with a smile, his fingertips brushing inadvertently against the scar on the inside of her wrist. A lash mark left years ago in the Osmond family's ancestral hall. Delia instinctively tried to withdraw her hand, but then heard him whisper softly, the direction of this scar resembles the craftsmanship of the engravings in your work. The clamor of the cocktail party suddenly faded into the distance. For the first time in 3 years, someone looked at her scar not with pity or curiosity, but as if admiring a piece of art. 3 months later, Delia stood at the unveiling ceremony of the Delia Foundation. The room was packed with journalists. Rex stood by her side as legal counsel, always stepping in with precise legal terminology to extricate her when she was cornered by tricky questions. Ms. Raymond, rumors suggest you established this foundation to retaliate against your ex-husband. Did you have a hand in the bankruptcy of his company? Delia was about to respond when the microphone was suddenly taken over by a hand with distinct knuckles. The charity law has clear regulations. Rex spoke at a measured pace. The establishment of a foundation requires rigorous review by civil affairs authorities. Are you, as a journalist, questioning the fairness of our judicial system? The questioning reporter was instantly left speechless. After the meeting, Delia found a cup of warm grapefruit tea in the lounge, with a note tucked beneath it. You did great today. Ignore the gossip. I'll always be by your side. Holding the cup, she remembered her assistant mentioning that lawyer and had cancelled an important meeting just to come here this morning. In the misty steam of the tea, she took a serious look at the figure organizing the documents for the first time. Beneath those gentle brows, there was always an air of affirmation toward her. On a late autumn night, Delia was working overtime to revise the design drafts when the office suddenly lost power. Don't be afraid. Rex's voice came through the darkness. I have light on my phone. The moment the faint light flickered on, she saw the worried look in his eyes as he gazed at her. What are you doing here? Evelyn said you've been staying up late a lot recently, so I wanted to come check on you. He lifted the thermal container in his hand. Auntie made some soup. Good for the stomach. Delia suddenly felt her eyes grow warm. There was a time when she, too, would hold soup like this, waiting for someone who would never come home on time. Rex. For the first time, she called his name earnestly. Why are you so good to me? In the darkness, his fingers lightly lifted, then restrainedly lowered. Because you're worth it. There aren't so many whys. Meanwhile, in a certain sanatorium, the deported and deemed mentally unstable Hugh stared at the two standing side by side in the financial magazine. His fists clenched until they creaked. The small print in the corner of the newspaper stung his eyes. Rex and Galaxy founders' alleged romance exposed. He frantically dialed the long-blocked number until the nurse snatched his phone. Mr. Hugh, it's time for your medicine. Autumn leaves fluttered outside the window, and in a daze, he remembered how many years ago, there was a girl who waited just like this for him to turn around. Now the galaxy still shines brightly, but it no longer illuminates his night sky. The scent of disinfectant permeated the air in the hospital's intensive care unit. Hugh's mom leaned against the headboard, her bony fingers tracing a photo in the album of Delia just after she married into the Osmond family. Dressed in an elegant cheapao, bending to offer incense to the ancestors in the family shrine. Madam, Miss Delia has arrived, the butler announced softly. Hugh's mom jerked her head up as the hospital door opened, revealing Delia in a dark green overcoat, her hair coiled in a flawless bun. After some time apart, the submissive look in her eyes had been replaced by composure. Delia. Hugh's mom struggled to get out of bed but stumbled and fell to her knees. Delia instinctively took half a step forward, then stopped. Hugh's mom grabbed the hem of her clothes while still kneeling, tears rolling down in large drops. I'm sorry, my child. Delia looked at the noblewoman who had once whipped her with a cane, now prostrate at her feet like a withered leaf. She bent down to help the woman up, only to have her wrist seized. This is the Osmond family's heirloom passed down to the eldest daughter-in-law. Hugh's mom trembled as she slipped a jade bracelet off her own wrist, trying to put it on Delia's. I was blind not to give it to you back then. The moment the jade touched her skin, Delia suddenly withdrew her hand. The bracelet fell to the ground and shattered into two pieces. Have you forgotten? She lowered her gaze to the two broken pieces, her expression tinged with indifference. On the third day of our marriage, you said I was petty and unworthy of this bracelet. Hugh's mom's sobs abruptly stopped as the memory flashed in her mind. That day when she had presented the bracelet to Elva, their guest, in front of the entire family. It's all that wretched woman's fault, Hugh's mom wailed, clutching at her sleeve. She deceived Hugh and brought ruin upon the Osmond family. Do you truly believe that all of this ultimately stems from Elva? Delia interrupted. But can you honestly claim ignorance of everything? Wasn't it you who silently allowed all of this to happen? Hugh's mom gasped heavily, avoiding the topic as she pulled out a document from under the pillow. This is the Osmond family's final 5% of shares, as long as you're willing to help Hugh. So this is your real goal, isn't it? She pushed the document back and shook her head. You begged me with your life to come see you. But in truth, you wanted me to feel pity when I saw your miserable state and then help you, didn't you? Unfortunately, the Osmond family's hole is too deep. I won't take on this mess. No. That's not, Hugh's mom said with reddened eyes. Delia, after all, you were once husband and wife. After all these years, do you truly have no heart at all? Don't you know best whether I have or not? Delia straightened her coat and turned to leave. I've already settled the medical bills. Consider it thanks for your 3 years of care. Enough, don't you think? Hugh's mom felt a strong metallic taste rise in the back of her throat. Suppressing it, she grabbed Delia's bag strap. Delia, I'm begging you as your mother. At least go see Hugh. There's no need. As she closed the door, she heard the long beep of the monitor inside. The medical staff rushed over in haste. She took 2 steps back but ultimately did not turn around. Early the next morning, Hugh's mom passed away, and the news reached her ears. Delia, do you want to go see? Rex handed a cup of hot tea to Delia and said, if you want, I can go with you. No, it's unnecessary. I still have the final touches left on this design draft. No time for such trivial matters. Noticing the person beside her had fallen silent, Delia tilted her head slightly. Rex, do you also think I'm too cruel? No, Delia, I only think you're very brave. Delia, will you marry me? Amidst a sea of flowers, Rex knelt on one knee, holding a simple diamond ring. Evelyn stood nearby covering her mouth in suppressed laughter while recording with her phone. Delia was taken aback for a moment, then smiled. So sudden. I've been preparing since we confirmed our relationship 6 months ago. Rex said earnestly. I'm certain. My future partner is you, and can only be you. From the moment we met until now, we've always been so compatible. We work together, share similar tastes, and deeply love each other. I can't think of any reason to wait. Delia tilted her head slightly, the corners of her eyes turning red. Rex was absolutely right. Being around him always feels so comfortable. Delia, don't just space out. Evelyn also grew a bit tense from the atmosphere. This proposal is mainly about your own wishes. I insisted on tagging along, but not to pressure you. If you're not ready yet. Okay. Evelyn's voice cut off abruptly as she suddenly lunged forward, tightly hugging Delia, who had just been about to reach out for Rex to slip the ring onto her finger. This is wonderful. Delia, we'll be family from now on. Rex's hand holding the diamond ring froze mid-air. He shot an annoyed glare at his impulsive sister before turning back to Delia, his eyes brimming with warmth and laughter. On the wedding day, Evelyn suddenly teared up while pinning the veil for her. Delia, you must be happy. Delia burst into laughter, though her eyes also reddened slightly, misted with a faint haze. What? You don't trust me marrying your brother? I'm just too happy. When the organ played the wedding march, she noticed Rex's fingers trembling slightly at the altar. When the priest asked, do you take? He blurted out, I do, so quickly that it sent the guests into fits of laughter. During the bouquet toss, Delia purposely threw it backward with a flourish. The bouquet arced through the air, grazing the last row of church pillars where a hunched figure in a hat and mask scrambled to dodge. What's wrong? Rex followed her gaze. Nothing. Delia stood on tiptoe and kissed the groom. I was mistaken. A few days later, at a sanatorium in the suburbs. Mr. Hugh, your account balance is insufficient. The nurse handed him a bill. If payment isn't made by tomorrow, we'll have to ask you to leave. Hugh took the bill numbly. Ever since the Osmond family went bankrupt and his mother passed away, he had been living here. Once a business elite, he could no longer afford even the most basic medical care. As he dragged his suitcase out of the sanatorium gate, the financial news was playing on the large screen by the street. The creator of the Starry River series, Delia, recently announced her marriage with great fanfare, driving the company's valuation to new heights. On the screen, Delia beamed radiantly, her diamond ring sparkling, while the man beside her gently held her waist. They looked so perfect together. Hugh stood frozen on the street, the rain soaking his clothes. He remembered how long ago Delia had smiled at him the same way, but he had never cherished it. Rain mixed with tears streamed down his face. Hugh knew that the Delia who had once loved him deeply had now truly found her own happiness, and he had forever lost the one who loved him most.